first part of this video is basically how I came to be into fishing. I think it's a genetic trait. It goes back donkey's years, way back into the last, well, not the last century, the century before. And it's continued all the way through. And the second part is about fly tying and things I've learned along the way, which may be a benefit, but then again they may not. It's quite long. I was going to divide it into 2 videos, but if you get fed up halfway through, then you can stop it and go and have a cup of tea and then come back to it later, or not, as the case may be. Anyway, it's a change from Corona. My interest in fishing goes back 70 years. My grandfather and his brother Bill, they were both avid fishermen, and they rented a stretch of the River Eden downstream from Scandalbeck to Eastfield Bridge, which was between Kirby Stephen and Appleby. They lived in Kirby Stephen. Apart from balls nights, they set off on their bikes every evening. My grandfather was a tailor in Kirby Stephen, and my great uncle Bill, as far as I'm aware, he seemed to do very little. My grandfather, he was a founder member of Kirby Stephen Angling Club and the Balls Club. But in 1915-16, they both bought a Hardy's 9'6" perfection rod with matching 2.5-inch Hardy reels. I think it was a Hardy Birmingham, but I'm not sure. This is the letter from the House of Hardy when we made some inquiries about these 2 rods. I didn't know. So that one there, which is in my possession, was manufactured in 1915, and my granddad's rod was manufactured in 1916. My grandfather died in 1949, just as he was halfway through building me a fishing rod, unfortunately, and his Hardy rod and reel were passed to his eldest son, and then to his grandson, and then eventually to his great-grandson. But when I asked about him, the reel was lost and the rod had been broken, and I think it was eventually sold. Bill's rod and reel, they were passed on to the middle son, Jack, and then when he died, they came to my father, and he also acquired Jack's J.B. Walker of Newcastle 9-foot rod and reel. And then eventually they all came to me with a great big box of bits. That's it. And there you can see the number. 05134A. It's obviously coming for some hammer, but it was very well used. The first ring and the tip ring are lined with ceramic, like that, and they've got this sort of red whipping holding them in place. But when you get to the top of this, the bottom section, it's obviously had a ring replacement there. My great uncle Bill has obviously just stuck a snake ring in there and whipped it on with different coloured silk. Not that it matters. The other thing which is immediately obvious is the top section is about 6 inches shorter than the bottom section. It's always been broken at some time, and funnily enough I found the other end in a box of bits which was handed on to me. But obviously it's not repairable. You'd need a complete new top section, it's not worth it. And there's the smashed off tip. What a great shame. probably fell over when he's had too much to drink and buried it into a bank. It's just nice how the top section slots in, and that little clamp there, when you twist it round, this little bit slides into there. I don't want to push this in, chances are I'll never get it out, and that'll be a nuisance. And the other thing about it, somebody's revarnished it at some time. What with, I have no idea. But anyway, it's just a memento. Sort of family heirloom. This is a J.B. Walker Newcastle on Tyne rod, which belonged to my Uncle Jack. I think this is from the 1920s, mid 1920s, this rod. You can see by the butt it's been very well used. And it's in very original condition. Undamaged, although there's a bit of whipping needs replacing there. And it just has snake rings and no, it doesn't seem to have any ceramic insert either. And with the cane rods came these 3 reels, 2 Walkers and 1 Hares. It's the Hares, really. I'm surprised it's so small. It's only 2.5 inch. Still got the original line on, and it's got this sort of trademark. I don't know what these lines were made of. Certainly not like modern lines, not as slick. This is one of the 2 Walker reels, but I noticed this reel is Mark's Anik. So whether they'd moved to there or what, I don't know. Anyway, it's a 3-inch reel with various bits on it. And it's still got the original line on as well. Crazy in the handle there. I suppose it's made of bone. This reel doesn't feel anything like the quality of the other 2, but it is a Walker's reel. It says there, Walker's Newcastle on Tyne. I'm not sure about that screw mine, but I suppose it's right. And there's a decaying gut leader crumbling away. And with the rods came this box of bits, which is quite interesting to look through. I suspect the tins are more interesting. What's in them? There's some sort of old silk there and a sort of strange little face. Junior Megazones. Never heard of them. It's just full of bits of lead of all descriptions. There's a little fly box, and they're all spider flies, spider patterns, woodcock and yellow, cocky bondu, March brown. I can't read the others. I'm surprised that they're still in good condition. Fly box, they're all well used. Nothing in it. Bucket in. They're all smoked pipes. All full of casts. Ancient casts. Tied on gut. I'll wrap round price tickets from the shop. That was the same. Now we'll chuck it out. This has got hackle pliers in. I've got a pile of short shank hooks. And some silks and a strange little pair of fold-up scissors. Several envelopes full of feathers. This is snipe. Interesting tuck safety stamp on it. And there's a partridge. What's that date on there? 1949. This milk jacket just contains hooks. That's a 1970 stamp on there. I don't know what it's of. And this one contains a load of nylon. Now remember this, because nylon had just been invented then. This was a real bonus. Yeah. Much stronger than gut for tying leaders. It's from about 1945, that. These are grouse feathers. Very interesting date. January 1914, that's before the First World War, I think. That George V stamp. And these are corncrake feathers. Well, corncrakes were really common. I mean, every field had a pair of corncrakes in the summertime. They were rasping away, you could hear them rasping away. So of course farm machinery did for them, and they all disappeared. So you have to go out to the sort of Outer Hebrides on the far west coast of Ireland to hear corncrakes these days. No, these are woodcock. And they're all in good condition, but when you bring in second-hand feathers and capes, the best thing you have to do is stick them in a freezer for a few days, just to kill anything off that might be in there. The last thing you want to be doing is bringing in sort of feather mites, which will damage the capes you've already got, and which you might have spent a considerable amount of money on. A little book there on fly tying for the beginner. I wonder if you can get hold of these. I'll have to have a look on the internet. There's a couple of Hardy's guys there, the coronation number. It's very common. Seemingly everybody got one of these. This is earlier, this is a 1936 one. Interesting to look through them. And by appointment to all these kings who now don't exist. The King of Italy, he's long gone. The King of Spain, he disappeared as well. So this is pre-Franco. But of course, when Franco died, the King of Spain was sort of reinstated. Interesting looking through them. Fishing in India. Trout fishing in South Africa. All to do with the Empire. Angling in Australia. Angling in the Far East. Singapore, Hong Kong, China, Hawaii, Fiji, the Andaman Islands, the Philippines. It does have some nice coloured plates of the flies, considering that it was printed in the 1930s. A nice plate of salmon flies. And about 2 shillings each they were. And there's some lures for 3 and 6pence each. And lures for salmon and sea trout. Quite expensive for their day. And these are all the dead baits they sold. There were the prices. And this is an old bucky pouch, I think. And it's just full of old casts. Dozens of them all wrapped around little bits of card. Most of them nearly 100 years old. And this was in a box as well, which my amazement it's heavily leaded. A piece of string with these 2 giant hooks on. It looks like a salmon snatch. What it's doing in here I don't know. My granddad would have had nothing to do with such things. I suspect he's probably found it somewhere. There's also this little box, an old tuna level wiring number 4200. Bronson's, I think they're an American company. Anyway, on investigation, deeper in the box, was this reel, and it fits into that little box. It is in fact a Bronson old tuna 4200 with Bakelite end plates. And I don't know what that line is on there, but I think it's they made these from about 1933 to the beginning of the war, so this is a 1930s thing. There's no line spreader on there. The last thing of any interest in the box is this little 2-inch reel. Got the original line on, a ratchet. There's no name on it at all, does it say who made it? No, it's a little bottle from the chemist. I suspect it was used for paraffin, which they used to put on the dry fly to help them to float, paraffin or some kind of oil. And we've got all sorts of sophisticated silicon things. But I wonder if Dixon's the chemist is still there. My recollection is that they only fish with wet flies, which they tied themselves, and from feathers they were given by local keepers, and they were tied on 14, 16 hooks using PSL silks. And if the flies which came to me are representative of the ones they used, then they were mostly North Country spider patterns like partridge and orange, snipe and purple, grouse and yellow, corncrake and crimson, and March browns. When I arrived at the river, they sort of cast in, and then they just seemed to leave it for ages. They sort of gut the leader in the water and let it soak and become a little more supple, while they spent ages smoking their pipes, although they seemed to do more smoking of matches than pipes and tobacco. And fishing didn't start until late evening, and it ran on into dark, when the spider patterns were exchanged for moth patterns tied with owl feathers, I remember, such as the busted fly. And a good fish would be just over £1. My part for what it was, and I wasn't there very long, seemed to be retrieving flies caught in bushes. And as I had to be in bed long before they came home, I used to have to leave early, which I wasn't really happy about. When the trout season finished, they would fish for grayling. Now the River Eden had never had any grayling in it, but some people surreptitiously tipped a load of grayling fly into the river from the churchyard at St Theobald's in Great Musgrave in the 1880s, much to the anger of the big landowners who thought they would eat the salmon and trout eggs on the reds. Anyway, the grayling thrived. Well, so did the salmon and trout, really. And there's some big grayling up to £3 are often caught on the River Eden. But most grayling are found downstream of Musgrave, which, if you're having to go down there on a bike, it's a long way in the winter time. There's an excellent book called Fishing in Eden by William Nelson. It was published in 1922. It's a good read, and although the originals are very expensive, it has been reprinted. There's been a reproduction made. Seemingly, one of Nelson's uncles was one of the Musgrave grayling conspirators. And ironically, he's buried in the same churchyard from which these fish were tipped. But I often wonder if he and my grandfather ever met. I don't recollect them ever fishing for salmon. Salmon was guarded preciously by river keepers in those days, and it was an expensive business. But in this box of bits was what I think is a weighted salmon snatch. I mean, poaching was heavily punished. And my grandfather, he was a stalwart of the town, and being a founder member of the angling club, I'm sure he wouldn't have been tempted to do that. He probably found it on the bank or found it in the river and just stuck it in his pocket. Although how it came to end up in this box, I don't know. And that was it, until 1990, when I attended fly tying classes tutored by Don Williams, an excellent fly tyer from Middlesbrough. And I did this for 5 years, and I tied 155 different flies. But I never went fishing until the mid-90s, when I joined a small syndicate on the River Ure between Kilburn Bridge and Chalcot, fishing at every opportunity for trout and grayling. And this is just one file full of all the flies I tied at night class, with a sample of the fly in a little envelope. And I made detailed notes of how I did it. And that's just how a sort of typical specimen of what you pick up at night class. I mean, when the flies have been in a little plastic bag like that, they get squashed and become flat. If you just hold them in above a pan of boiling water, they instantly spring back to their original condition. Amazing. Here's a couple of flies which have been squashed flat. And just show the effect of holding them in steam. Crane fly, daddy long legs, and that's an iron blue dun. put it on up with the same fly. Amazing. It only takes about 10 seconds. Now I quickly realised that I never used more than 98 or even 98 or even more percent of the flies at a time. I mean, once the trout season had finished, I tried fishing on a local pond for small carp and tench, but without much success. And the thing about tench is you've got to be there at first light, which is not really the best time of day for me. But I'd bought an Abu rod and a small Shakespeare fixed spool reel for the job, but carried on with the fly fishing. Now one trout season, and I can't remember the year it was just one flood after another. And I passed a comment on this in the local angling shop. And a young chap behind the counter suggested I try barbel fishing, as they like floods. And he proceeded to sell me a cheap carp rod and a load of block end feeders, and some giant hooks and a pile of bait. And he explained the rudimentaries and then suggested I go down to Connell Lodge, I hadn't a clue where that was, on the river swale, where I could practice the art of coarse fishing. Well, for a bloke who didn't even know what a peg was, this was a complete new language to me. So when I got to Connell Lodge, paid my money, I drove as far as I could to the very top of the stretch. I think it was something like peg 3, and set up, which seemed to take ages. Remembering what he'd said. So, as the first 4 feeders went straight into the bushes opposite and were lost, I decided the best course of action was to fling these things downstream. I mean, fishing with 2 rods was a bit of a novelty as well, and just putting them on a rest and then sitting on the seat watching them. And when I'd been used to sort of casting, wading, moving, casting, wading, it was really novel. The river was also up a little bit and brown coloured. It wasn't sort of gin and clear water, which I was used to on the upper Ewer. Anyway, I'd been sitting there watching these rods for about an hour, wondering what it was all about, when the bottom rod had shot off the rest into the drink, as if it had become attached to a passing car. So I rapidly wound in the abo and ploughed my way after it, through some balsam and nettles, and being a big carp rod with a little reel on, it floated. And after about 50 yards, it just came to a stop in the middle of the river. And I was able to cast this other line across it and pull it in. Anyway, there was no fish on, needless to say. But I returned and said I was ready for the next one. And being used to a 2-pound trout being a big fish, a 7-pound barbel was something else. Anyway, that was the start of my barbel fishing, and I was hooked on it. I mean, no pun intended. But I still thoroughly enjoy a day's fly fishing. There's just something about it. Well, if you're going to have a break, this is probably a good time to have it. Go and make a cup of tea or do something else. I should have a few adverts to put on. As I said earlier, having attended fly tying lessons for years, I've accumulated a mass of capes, dubbing, silks, furs, herl, hooks, tinsel, well, you name it. And the vast majority I'll never ever use again. And the bits that I do use, they'll last me a lifetime. And to protect them all from the dreaded moths, I keep all the fur and feathers in plastic bags. And to kill the moth larvae if they appear, and they shouldn't really, the best thing to do is to put the whole lot in your freezer for a couple of days. That kills them off. So here's a bit of advice based on my experience. If you want to tie your own flies for fishing, I mean, what flies do you fish with regularly? You'll probably find it's less than 10. And only buy the materials to tie those. If you want to tie a new fly, just go and buy a couple ready tied and see how you get on. The most expensive item you'll need is a vise, and they come in a whole multitude of designs and prices. I'm often asked about fly tying vises and which one to get. Well, there are a multitude of these, but this is the one I bought originally, and it wasn't made by a fly tying outfit, to be honest. It was made by an engineering company in Sheffield, and it has absolutely rock hard jaws at the top, which is what you want. And it has a C-clamp, so I just tie it onto the bench, and that's the company I got it from. Yorkshire Fly Tying Tools, it says there, from Sheffield. Now, the one big disadvantage with this is that when the hook is in the jaws of the vise, you can't rotate it. In other words, you can't turn it upside down or have a look on the other side. So if you were thinking of buying a vise, then that was something really I would recommend. And probably the cheapest you're looking at is probably about £60, but you can get a reasonable one for about £100. You can go absolutely berserk and buy that Swiss vise by some bloke, which is about £1,000 or so. Yeah, so if you're buying a vise, hard jaws, and one where you can rotate the fly when it's firmly held in the jaws of the vise. But I've tied hundreds of flies on this without any great problems. And these are the other things you're going to need. They're not wildly expensive. Although a good pair of scissors might cost a lot. You need some fly tying wax, or just beeswax will do, but beeswax tends to be a bit hard. Some sort of quality scissors for cutting the feathers, fur and silk, but when it comes to wire, then you don't want to be using those on the wire. I mean, normally wire you can spin off, but thick wire, I've got some scissors there which I just bought down at the local shop. And you need one of these, a whip finishing tool. That's just one I made when I was hard up. And these are hackle pliers, and they work better if you've got a bit of rubber on the end. So if you've got some fine rubber tubing like the old bicycle valve tubing, that works well. They tend to grip the hackles better. Nothing worse than getting 2 or 3 turns on them, blowing the thing slips out and it all unwinds. And some kind of fine needle for the dubbing, put in the varnish on various bits. on the head in particular. I think that's a dissection pin which I've acquired at some time, and some fly tying varnish. It tends to be a bit thick, and I dilute it with cellulose thinners. And these are gossamer silks. These are all Pearsall, but there are lots of different makes now. I suspect there are some that are a little bit better. You've got to keep these out of light, otherwise the silk deteriorates and it becomes quite fragile. When you pull on it, it snaps. And you're going to need a bobbin holder, which seemingly I've missed off the list. You don't want to cheap bobbin holders. They don't grip it, the bobbin tight enough. But the most important thing about them is there must be no rough edges on the exit there, otherwise it just snags the silk. And you can buy them with a ceramic or pot lining if you want to spend a little bit more money on them. And if you can afford it, buy two. Then it means you can you're not having to constantly change the bobbin over when you want to change the colour. And quite often in old books, or in relatively modern books, it gives you a Pearsall silk number to use. And this is the original card. And you can see all the colours and the numbers. So if you want to tie the original partridge and orange, then you need Gossamer Silk 6A, which is called gold on here. Most people tend to use number 19, which is hot orange. Don't buy packets of feathers, as most of them are too big for northern river flies. And don't buy multi-packs of capes, because some of them you'll never use. And don't spend a fortune on mets or whiting capes until you're more experienced and want to tie more complicated flies. I mean, ideally you should go to classes, but I mean not everybody can get to classes. But there are some excellent books on tying flies, and these are some of the ones I found useful, but I bought them a long time ago. There'll be others now, and the quality of photographs is now super. If you're thinking of taking up fly tying, and I fully enjoy it. There are thousands of books on the whole business, but here's just a few which I found useful. I mean, they go back a while, these now. But this one's about fly tying tools and materials, and it's really well illustrated. Plenty of bobbin holders. Yeah, plates of the different capes, and opposite what the different hackles look like. There's a chapter on fur and feathers. It's very good. There's bits on man-made materials. For the real enthusiast, how to dye your own. Written by the same author, Jacqueline Wakeford. It tells you how to use all those fur and feathers. This is a book on fly tying techniques. And again, beautifully illustrated. So you get the illustration and the instructions on the left. And there's lots and lots of flies in here, but it's mainly about techniques. Fan wings and hair wings and parachutes and woven bodies and things like that. But yes, it's a good book. This is a more modern book. This is by Peter Gallico. And again, the illustrations and the instructions are super. And it starts off with each fly telling you what materials you need for it. And you get a diagram of the finished fly. And then you get all the instructions on how to tie it. If you're already into fly tying, these are 3 useful books to have. Showing all various dressings. Guide to River Trout Flies by John Roberts. 8 of the best. And you get a sort of comment down the side, and then the dressing, and then opposite you get the colour illustrations. And there are the 8 of the best, as he says. Well, hundreds of flies in here. This is just his mayfly selection. This is a wonderful little book for those who fish Yorkshire rivers. This is mainly about spider flies, soft hackle flies, and it's by the comedian Mike Harding. Again, beautifully illustrated. And there are 2 of the best. Slate and purple, partridge and orange. And these beautiful illustrations. And there are a couple of winged flies. Nothing fancy and relatively easy to tie. But although it hasn't been published very long, it's a difficult book to get hold of. If you're into fishing for rainbows, then this little book has 70 Successful Trout Lures by Bob Carnell and Kenneth Robson. And again, the illustrations are wonderful. A familiar lure, the appetizer, Bob Church fly. Materials you need. And the instructions, and you get a little bit of chat as it goes through. I found this to be a great fly fishing for rainbows. Again, it's an easy tie. And that's Richard Walker fly, a Sweeney Todd. The best fly for rainbows I found was a Montana nymph in green. But for some reason, the Montana nymph doesn't appear in this book. There's a couple of Montana nymphs for rainbows which aren't in that book. You tie them in various colours, but I found the green one is the best. That lime green. And when you become really good, you might end up tying one of these. This is a Missouri Wonder, an American book. But you need an awful lot of materials and they're expensive to tie that. And an awful lot of patience. But isn't that a wonderful thing? It comes from this book by Michael Radensich. Oh, this fella here. The DVD comes with it, showing you how to do them all. Whether they catch fish or not, I have no idea, but they certainly look impressive. But for the real purists, if you want to go back right to the beginning, then this little book, I mean this is a reprint of North Country Flies by Mr. Pritt. It was originally published in 1885, and the original book is very expensive, but you can find these quite easily. There's a description of the flies, and you can see the illustrations on the opposite side. Not very inspiring, I have to say, compared with today's illustration, but nevertheless, colour illustrations in the 1880s must have been quite something. If you're very interested in North Country fly fishing, then this is an excellent book. It's a great read, but it also has patterns and illustrations in it. But it goes into the history of them all and lots of detail. I mean, there's also superb demonstrations by the like of Davy McPhail and others on YouTube. Whereas professional fly tiers tie hundreds of each fly for angling companies, it's very unlikely that you will ever be as good as them. You're tying flies to catch fish, and it's the fish that they'll decide if it's a half decent representation. But when you catch a fish on a fly you've tied yourself, it's a bit like catching your first barbel. Wonderful. This is just a list of the things I use on a regular basis for tying the flies I need for Yorkshire rivers. So, a hare's mask, a grey partridge skin, starling skin, snipe wings, grouse wings, water hen wings, cock pheasant centre tail. And then for the wet flies, which I nearly always fish, you need hen neck capes. Greenwell is a good one to get. Furnace type, blue dun and grizzle, they'll cover most of the flies I tie. Cock neck capes are essentially used for tying dry flies. Black ginger, blue dun, grizzle, badger, iron blue dun if you can get it, but be very careful because the iron blue duns come in a multitude of blues. You really need to inspect one before you buy it. And then you're going to need dubbing, natural ball, rabbit's fur, and various colours of seal fur substitutes. I use a lot of peacock herl, and then other things like medium copper or gold wire, and fine lead wire. Tying silks, well, there's 6 there: orange, purple, crimson, cream, black or yellow. And I've always used Pearsall's tying silks. I mean, they go back donkey's years, but I'm sure there are far more modern silks which do the job a little bit better. And you need fly tying wax, thin varnish, dubbing needle, hackle pliers, whip finishing tool, and an assortment of hooks. 14, 16, 18 down-eyed wet fly bronze hooks I usually use from partridges. But there are lots of other different makes. So if you're into tying or thinking of tying flies to use in Yorkshire rivers, then this is just a selection of a few things which you'll probably use more of than anything else. And the first thing is a hare's mask. You use these hairs at the bottom of the ears here for tying gold-ribbed hare's ear. This is a grey partridge skin. These little feathers at the top you need for tying partridge and orange, or partridge and whatever other colour you fancy putting on. You can buy packets of feathers. Those feathers have already been pulled off, but a large number of them you can't use because they're either too big or they're deformed or bent, or there's fibres missing from them. So best to buy the whole thing. Last your lifetime. Starling skin. The feathers are often used as a substitute for feathers which you can't get now. It's, something substitute. But again, cheap. There's a pair of snipe wings which you need for tying snipe and purple. Very good early season fly. Use these little feathers along here. A pair of water hen wings, and you need these little feathers here for tying that water hen blower, a very popular North Country spider pattern. When you buy capes on the internet, and these are all Indian capes, then be very careful what you get. These were all sold to me as Greenwell capes for tying Greenwell flies. These three are cock capes. This is a hen cape. Hen capes are much softer, and they're used, as I say, on wet flies. They sink very easily. So if you're thinking of spending a fair amount on a cape, then it's far better to inspect it before you buy it. When you're buying a cape, it's these little feathers at the bottom which you're going to use to tie river flies in North Yorkshire. The others are too big. So you're looking to see how many of them there are and whether they're straight, whether there's bits missing off them. And that one doesn't look too bad. Now this is an Indian cock cape. I don't know what you'd pay for that these days. But if you really want to lash out, you can buy whiting or Met's capes. I'll just show you one so you can see the difference. This is a Met's grade 3 cape. There are two better than this, but this, for the ordinary fly tire, this is good enough. I mean, just look at the hackles on there, how long they are. How many turns you could get out of them. You need these capes for doing things like parachute flies. We need lots of turns. But they aren't cheap. Useful capes to have are these furnace type capes where you've got a black bit down the middle. When you tie them on, that black bit makes up the look of a thorax on the fly. And they come in all sorts of different colours. I think this is a badger, which is black and white, black and cream actually, but they come in a variety of colours. This is a hen cape, which has got that black bit down the middle. Another thing you use a lot of is this stuff, peacock herl. And this is an assortment of dubbings which you use for making bodies. Moleskin, natural moleskin. You can buy it dyed black. And then these various fibres. Now these first four are all seal's fur. They were made from dyeing the white fur from young seals which had been killed, and it's been banned, and quite rightly so. So now you buy seal's fur substitute. See, this is by Partridge, synthetic. You can tell because it's got a sort of sparkle to it, which you don't get with a seal's fur. Seal fur tends to be more matte. And this is a cock pheasant centre tail, which I've been using. And the rib runs right up the middle. And best to get these in the winter time, because in the winter time they've got this lovely colouring on one side. And the along with the fibres, the better. Well, you could go on forever. Wires, tips, tinsels, flossies, fur. But that'll do for now. That will get you through the season. Now, as I rarely use fish dry flies, I buy them, I don't make them. I only tie them if they're really small, which you might need, for instance, which might be necessary for a sipping grayling. They can be infuriating. Things like Griffith's gnat or a bumble type, which is a sort of palmet fly, on a 18-20 fine wire hook, or even smaller sometimes. This is an example which you might get if you buy flies. On the right, this one was one which was sent as a partridge in orange, and it's way too heavily dressed. This is a partridge in orange, as it should be, a spider pattern. Although this one's got a sort of silver ribbon, which the original didn't have. But that's what you want. You certainly don't want that. The most successful dry fly I found is a cling hammer, and they're tied sort of parachute style. But you need long hackles to get enough turns to make the parachute bit, and that usually involves an expensive cape. Unless you intend to tie loads of cling hammers, I would just go and buy some. Tying salmon flies, well, that's in a different league, with rare exceptions. I mean, such as a woolly gun or the silver stork's tail, they're quite easy to tie, hair-winged flies. And salmon flies usually need lots of expensive materials. So, but if you can afford to go salmon fishing on good waters, then you don't need to tie flies of your own. You just go and buy the blooming things. But they aren't cheap. So this is a rod I use for fly fishing today. It's a Shakespeare, I don't know what number it is or what model it is. It's a 6'7", 9'6", to use with a number 6 tapered line or a number 7 weight forward line. If you want to know what that is, you're going to have to look it up. The bottom rings all have sort of 3 legs, whereas the upper rings just have the one, but they're all lined, and they're not snake rings. I mean, the advantage of snake rings is if you're fishing in a freezing cold and it tends to be icing up, then these tend to get blocked very quickly, whereas on snake rings you don't get that problem. But then again, who's going to go fly fishing when it's absolutely raging cold like that? Not me. And then coupled with a rod I have a Shakespeare Bewlight. Very old fashioned now, very old. They're almost on vintage fishing tackle websites. And the crucial thing is the line. There are hundreds of them, but I've always stuck by this one. This is a Cortland Peach line, 444 I think is the number of it, and this is a double tapered line. In other words, it tapers at both ends, so when one end gets worn I can take this off, turn it round and use the other end, which you can't do with weight forward lines. And I've always found it really satisfactory. You can buy what they call mill ends, but if you feel this Cortland line it's absolutely slick, smooth, whereas when you feel mill ends they've got a sort of rough texture to them and they don't go through the rings quite as well. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. I mean, these Cortland lines, I don't know, about 50 quid now, but you can get mill ends for an awful lot less than that if your budget won't stretch to one of these. Obviously, if you're fishing small rivers like the Nid, or you're on the very upper reaches of the Ure or the Swale, you don't need a big rod like this. A 7'6" rod, which will take a size 4 line, is more than adequate. When you get a big rod like this, a 9'6" in confined spaces, it can prove very frustrating. But you don't need to spend a fortune on a rod. I mean, you can buy Hardy's rods, or you can buy Sage rods, or some of these American rods, you know, you're looking at £800 or even more. It does make you a better fisherman, and it doesn't mean you catch more fish. It's the same with flies, you know. You often see people on the bank that have got a fly box to die for. But at the end of the day, when you meet them back at the car and ask them how they've got on, they haven't had much success. But, they certainly look the part. If you're wondering what your good lady sees in walking around clothes shops, rummaging through the racks, looking at this, looking at that, then it's exactly the same as she's thinking when you're walking around an angling shop. Looking at this, looking at that, looking at the other. And you go in for half a dozen flies, before you know where you are, you come out, you've spent 50 quid. It's so easy. Especially if you're thinking of buying rods or reels. The assistant, you see the knots whizzing round in front of his eyes, and they can spot a beginner, a duffer, as soon as you walk through the door. Anyway, we'll see you again. Take care. Bye bye.